Welcome, everyone, to this week's edition of the Commercial Real Estate 101 Meetup Group. Excited to see you all today. Today, we actually have a phenomenal guest. So Michael Hironimus, who is going to talk a little bit about AI and commercial real estate. We had a chance to connect relatively recently because he gave a talk at our a local event for our CCIM board, where he talked about some tools that he's been leveraging in his work and obviously working with other clients as well. So I'm really excited about the discussion today because, obviously people that are in the brokerage space are constantly looking for ways to improve their business. And this doesn't just necessarily just apply to brokerage. I'm sure we'll talk a little bit about some of the other applications within commercial real estate as well. But it's just great to be able to have someone who knows enough about the topic to kind of share some unique insights. So Michael, it's great to see you as always, and excited for the discussion.
Yeah. Thanks for having me. Yeah. Excited to talk about all this. AI is, it's amazing. So
yeah, no, it is. And I'm learning more and more myself. And I know we've had some, light conversations about it myself. And I've watched you on a couple of different podcasts, particularly Bo Barron, who's a mutual friend of ours.
Sure.
You had a really awesome podcast episode with him about some of the applications that you're using in your day-to-day, and obviously with other potential, with other clients as well. So I'm looking forward to hearing a little bit about that as well. But just before we dive into the meat and potatoes of the conversation, I thought, why not share a little bit about yourself? So if you don't mind sharing a little bit about your background and what got you into the business, that'd be great.
Yeah. I started, well, yeah, so I'm still figuring out what I'm going to do when I grow up. I don't, I started off in a lot of different industries. I've had a lot of jobs. But I started in commercial real estate, 20 years ago. And it was just something, I had read some books, and I was doing a lot of work with this, on the insurance side, down during Hurricane Katrina, and I was working with this apartment owner, and I was just fascinated with the whole business and everything. And I came home and I said, that's what I want to do. I want to get into commercial real estate. And so that's exactly what I did. I just jumped in and started in sort of private equity, and then I moved into brokerage. And then about 8 years ago, I got into portfolio management. And during that time, about a year and a half ago, there was somebody who came to our CCIM chapter and did some stuff on AI. And this was, really early kind of on, and people were just starting to get curious about it. And I was like, wow, this is going to change really everything. That was kind of my feeling at the time. And so I jumped into it with both feet, and so here I am. Yeah. People ask. And so I teach for CCIM as well. I teach market analysis for the Institute, and market analysis lends itself so well to artificial intelligence because it's about research and putting all these elements together. And a lot of my students were saying, I'm hearing about this AI, and so they were wanting more information. And so I ended up putting together my own course that helps people sort of navigate AI. But, if you're just dipping your toe in the water, or if you're, have already got some experience, but you're wanting to sort of expand on it. And so that's what I've been doing really for the past year, is really building that out and helping folks. And then that led to a whole bunch of other things that we can talk about. But
yeah, no, it seems quite interesting. So really, this all stemmed from a speech or a seminar or some form of presentation that you heard about a year and a half ago.
Yeah,
that's amazing.
Yeah.
And you just saw the unique application of what this was presenting, and you decided to kind of take it and run with it. That's awesome.
Yeah, I mean, it was just one of those like aha moments. Like, this is so out of the realm of what I had experienced before. And you had heard about AI a little bit, back then. Chat GPT 3 had just come out, and but yeah, I was like, this is gonna really change a lot of things. I was wondering if there was a similar response to people when the internet came out. I was kind of young. I was, in high school, but when the internet was coming out, it was going to change everything. But I don't know how many people really knew that. You look at the old clips of people saying, this is not going to do much. It's just a passing fad sort of thing. And now if your power goes out, you can basically do nothing because you were so reliant on the internet. And I think that's going to be the way that AI is going to be as well in the future, where we're going to be so reliant on it. And the tools that are coming out now are just amazing. And we're just at the, we're in the second or third inning of AI and where this is going, and the implications for it as well. It's just fascinating to see it.
Definitely. No. So regarding that, I'd like to kind of walk through the evolution of that time frame to where you are today, and some of the realizations and some of the thought process that you came to as you started progressing through, that timeline. So to start out, I mean, what was some of the first applications that you saw as far as, valuable for, obviously you're in the brokerage space and the portfolio management space. So what were some of the realizations you came to early on where you said, okay, well, this particular tool or application is going to help us in this particular space or vertical?
Yeah. I think the first ones that I noticed, and this was going back, quite a ways, well, a year and a half, if that's quite a ways, but it seems like
not in
that
the grand
now.
scheme of things, if you think about it.
The first things I noticed were the ability to really upgrade your marketing. I graduated with a degree in English, and although I can't say I'm a very good writer, and I saw that immediately, like that was something where they could take, and that's basically what LLMs are, large language models, is their probability with tokens, which are, words or pieces of words, and then probability that puts them together. And so they've trained it on the entire internet, right? All the writing that has been done by humans in the past, they take that, and then there's probability statistics behind the LLMs, is basically all that they are. But the ability to rewrite those words in a way and in a style and in a coherence that that either you don't want to put the effort into, or you want to create a template that you can use over and over again. I thought that was really interesting. So flyers, OMs, you didn't have to rewrite the whole thing anymore. Now you could, take what you had in the past, or take somebody else's, that you really like, and then apply that to yourself. And I thought that was really unique. And then you could apply that to other things, right? Like social media, or writing white papers, or market research. Those things all lend itself really well to large language models. And so that was one thing that being an instructor in market research, that was one of the things that immediately jumped out to me.
Yeah, that's great. And that, to your point, that's a big piece of what I do in my business now with sites or applications like a ChatGPT, where you can take a status update for LinkedIn, where you don't necessarily want to write a very elaborate or compelling statement, and you just type in, hey, create a prompting is the big thing with a lot of these, with particular ChatGPT, is you can prompt it to say, hey, we have this new listing, like highlight the characteristics of it based on these specs, and then make a compelling post about why this is a property that people would want to purchase. Or in the OM side, where you fill in the you load up the property financials or application or whatever, and then you create a compelling statement that could potentially provide value to whatever your potential audience is. And
right.
Coupling that also with maybe having a virtual assistant where they could help you on the Canva side to create something nice and formulated and everything else. And it takes the computational power from you having to come up with something that's a compelling statement that obviously saves you a ton of time. And I've been able to, in my business, be able to streamline the marketing process, streamline even the operational process, where I can document processes within my business, so that as I start to onboard more people, you can train them up a lot more efficiently than you could before, where I would have to sit down and say, okay, well, first do this, then do this. Now you can create these modules or training manuals that are a lot more efficient to kind of make sure that you round out your operations. So that's interesting insight.
Well, you had brought up a key word that I think is really important for your audience to understand, and that's the prompting.
Mhm.
I heard this analogy a long time ago, and I forget where I had heard it from, but the analogy is that an LLM is like a really super smart intern, right? Somebody who is next to you that you can leverage all of their expertise and their knowledge. So they're trained on the entire internet, right? Um, but in order to communicate effectively with them, you have to speak their language in a sense, and that's where these prompting skills come in. And that is really the essence of being really highly productive with large language models and not being productive with them. Like early on, it was very difficult because I think people were trying to figure out how to speak to these LLMs, and so a lot of people went on and they just typed in, explain something to me like I'm a fifth grader sort of thing, and then they got kind of a crappy output and they were like, this AI, it's not going to do anything, right? And kind of dismissed it. But as time has gone on and we've learned these prompting techniques, like we've learned how to speak their language. For example, Chat GPT just within the past day brought their new 4.5 model into the plus subscription tier. Before it was in their pro tier, which was $200 a month, and they released it like a week and a half ago. Now today, I just checked, and it's on my tier at the $20 a month level. But I've been reading the reviews, and I haven't had a chance to play around with it because I just got it. But they're saying how it is different, that you have to talk to it differently than past models. But they said when you kind of get it right, the magic comes out of that model. And so that's just an example of how each of these models, they're trained slightly differently. And if you can speak their language, that's where the magic happens. And that's not only for, Chat GPT 4.0, but that's also for Claude and Grok and these new reasoning models that are coming out. The reasoning models use what's called chain of thought processing, and you have to prompt them in a different way than you would a non-reasoning model. And so it's these skills that I think people need to really focus on working on, so that you can get the most out of your productivity and these models. So.
So when you're in your business, for example, do you have like a list of prompts that you've created over time to improve the processes? So for example, if you're wanting to streamline operations and you are an investment sales broker and you create OMs, once you get a let's say a retail investment listing, you have a separate prompt where you essentially save it in your shared drive, and whenever you want to create a new OM, uniformly create the verbiage that's going to be included within the document, just to help you streamline that process. Is that correct?
Yes and no. I do have some prompts that I do tend to go back to. At this point, large language models still have a consistency problem.
Hmm.
If you are to put in a prompt, you'll notice that you get different outputs every time, right? And it'll be structured differently, and that goes back to the probability statistics of the models. It's also how they are finely tuned on the back end as well, that gives out these and people will notice. I mean, you put the exact same prompt in, and there's actually a self-consistency prompt where you ask it to, sort of self-check itself. But you'll get different wild and sometimes wildly different answers on the exact same prompt. What I tend to do more is I have prompt structures that I use. So, I have this and then I have this. And, the one that I've found for non-reasoning models that's the best is what is called roads. And I teach this in the course, but it's, role, it's objective, it's description, examples, and then a self-check. And that has really been one of the models that I think works really well. It tells it what it is. It provides, what exactly it is you want as an output. sort of gives descriptions and examples to help the LLM along and give you an idea. And then, says self-check. Now, going back to the intern analogy, if you were working with an intern, wouldn't you say the exact same thing? You wouldn't just say, "Hey, can you go do market research on Austin?" Right? They would likely go off and maybe try to think of what you might want, but it could come back wildly different than what it is you were actually trying to accomplish, right? Um, so now you can say, "Hey, this is what you are. You're a market research expert. This is the output that I want back from you," right? Here's a description of what I've done in the past. Here's some examples. Do you understand what I'm saying? That's almost a likely conversation that you would have with a super smart intern, right? And that's the same conversation that you have to have with large language models. They can't read your mind.
Mhm.
That's not where they are. They're there to be a tool, and in order to be a tool, they need to have clear, concise instructions on what it is that you're trying to accomplish. Otherwise, you're just going to get, something back that probably isn't what you had intended.
Definitely. No, of course, and obviously practice, to your point, makes perfect when it comes to this sort of thing,
Yeah,
because over time you can kind of see how things are supposed to be structured so that you can get the best
totally.
output possible. So that's
Yeah, and
interesting.
it's a tool, right?
Mhm.
It's just like anything else. It's a tool. So if you want to, if you're a carpenter, you want to get really adept at, a hammer and a chisel, or if you're, whatever it is. And the other thing is all these large language models, they're not the same tools. They all differ slightly. Like I work with different LLMs for different things that I'm trying to accomplish. And that comes with educating yourself, reading, and it also comes with just using the models, right?
Mhm.
Just like anything, if you want to be an adept carpenter, you have to use all the tools on a regular basis and get good at them. So
Definitely. No, I agree. So, kind of exploring those different tools, because obviously ChatGPT is one that a lot of people have experience with at this point. I feel
sure.
like it's been probably the most readily adopted AI technology, just with with the broadest possible audience. But
Yeah.
as far as refining, or not refining, but I guess focusing in on a few of the other applications that you found useful, and maybe we can focus on the brokerage application to start, and we can maybe dive
Sure.
into the investing application as well,
Yeah.
because there's a lot of people that listen to this podcast that are brokers, developers, but also they're on the investing side as well. But let's start off with some of the tools that you've worked with, and then maybe some of the applications that these tools can help with on the brokerage side, commercial
Yeah.
brokerage in particular.
Yeah. Well, you mentioned ChatGPT. I mean, that is really the gold standard, and the most widely adopted. I think there are over 200 million users now, which is pretty amazing. And you know, I would say ChatGPT is the best at their usage of tools. Like custom GPTs originally, when they came out like a year ago, that was groundbreaking, right? Um, you can basically customize your own LLM.
Mhm.
You could train it to do whatever it is, and then you could use what's called RAG, or retrieval augmented generation. You could put all of these things into it that you could query out of it, right? You could upload spreadsheets, and you could upload, PDF documents, and then ask it questions based on how you trained it. So that was really groundbreaking, and even today, custom GPTs, I think, are really. I don't think people quite understand the power of them, and what you're able to accomplish. And of course, they have other tools now as well. The new tasks, sort of the agentic AI tasks that they came out with, I think, are really cool. There's a lot of applications to commercial real estate. Um, the one that I'm really highly suggesting to people now, I was really down on Google for a while, up until maybe late last year. I kind of felt like they were struggling and kind of behind the other ones. And then, of course, all their money and their manpower just, launched them, and they've been coming out with some amazing stuff lately. The one that came out late last year was called Notebook LM, and I think a lot of people slept on it because it was a little different than your typical LLMs. But I think there's a lot of application in commercial real estate. So ChatGPT and a lot of others like Grok and Claude are really good at creativity. But when we're in commercial real estate, there are things that we don't want to get creative with, right? We want to get creative with maybe our marketing materials and things like that. But if you're abstracting a lease, you don't want to get creative with that, right? If you're trying to find information, market research, you don't want to get creative with that. You want the facts. And that's what Notebook LM was trained on. So they have a low hallucination rate. They've trained it for what's called a temperature, a very low temperature, but also very low creativity. So it's not creative, but it hallucinates a lot less. It's just based on the
Can
fact.
you explain the concept of hallucination to people who don't know? That'd
Yeah.
be helpful.
Yeah, so hallucination is where LLMs will just make stuff up,
Mhm.
and it has to do with the probability statistics that are behind the structure of the large language models. So sometimes the probability statistics will take it off on a random road, and that ends up being what's called a hallucination, where it'll just make stuff up. And that's a problem with LLMs and a criticism of them in a certain sense. And you can't take everything, just like if you had an intern, you can't take everything that they say. You got to check it over and so forth, sort of verify, trust but verify, as they say.
Mhm.
But Notebook LM was trained specifically to reduce those hallucinations and reduce the creativity, if you will. And so you upload your sources, and these can be from documents. It can be from websites. It can be from YouTube channels. It can be from basically any source that you want. The free tier allows 50 sources. The pro tier allows 300 sources. So just imagine if you can drop 300 leases. Let's say you've got a large retail shopping center. You can drop all them in and then understand what's happening with each of those leases. And it's not necessarily making stuff up because they're all cited there. And once again, it's a very low hallucination. There could be a hallucination in there, but the chances of it are much reduced. And then it gives a citation, so you can actually go into that document very quickly and see where it's pulling that information out. So that has really broad implications for commercial real estate, in my opinion. Claude is really good for financial analysis, believe it or not. For coding, you can create your own financial calculators. I'll show you how to do that. I think where we're going to end up is that you can create a discounted cash flow worksheet just by using regular language. Like I say, I want to input cash flows, and then I want, I made one exactly like this. And it's HTML format, so it just goes right into your browser where, you put in the cash flows and it spits out your net present value and your IRR calculations and summarizes it for you, and it's really cool. And so Claude, I think, is really great for that. Now, the thing is Claude is not connected to the internet, so their training data is only, it depends on the model, but it goes up to a certain point. So you're not doing that for like research stuff. That's more for coding, math, and things like that. Claude's good for.
And
The
with
last
that,
one I'll say is Grok has really been really shot up too. Grok was sort of a fringe LLM that maybe some ex Twitter users were using, but they just released Grok 3, and it's hitting all the benchmarks above some of the old legacy ones, and is really, really good. Good for mathematics, good for coding, good for creativity. Kind of hits a lot of different marks. So I've been using that a lot more as well.
definitely. Yeah, no, to your point regarding the the financial calculator. So with that, it spits out the HTML code so that if you wanted to like embed a financial calculator in your website, for example, you could do so.
Totally.
And so that
Yeah.
could be a tool for you to be able to use. And yeah,
Yeah.
it's kind of fascinating because yeah, the implications of that even on the broader software market. I'm an engineer by trade, and I used to be in the software development space, and so I can see that over time probably eliminating some jobs in the software space. But obviously, it's
Yeah.
going to be a benefit because you have a much more refined product. But it's going to be interesting to see how that plays out. So, you had mentioned Notebook LM, and I'd love to extrapolate a little bit on that as well, because I listened to your podcast episode with Bo a little while ago, and you had alluded to Notebook LM as a tool that you could potentially use, and linking that tool with another tool that I don't know if I don't remember the exact name, but you were essentially being able to upload a lot of these sources and then create content related to those sources that you uploaded. So
Yeah.
kind of interested to hear your take on that, because it was fascinating, the fact that you're able to do this and then create almost like a podcast or like any type of marketing material that you could then showcase your expertise as a broker, because we are in the information business. So if we can have information that we package up and present to the marketplace and kind of showcase our expertise over time, that could lead to business as well. So it'd be helpful if you could share a little bit about that.
Yeah, and I didn't create it. Google created it, but it's fascinating. So yeah, they've got in the upper right on there. There's create a podcast. I don't know if I don't think they call it a podcast, but I forget what the terminology that they use. But yeah, so you can determine which sources you want to use, and then you click on this button, and it creates essentially a podcast. It's two people talking. It's a man and a woman. And they go through, and the language is amazing. I don't know if you've had a chance to listen to it, but they've got the pauses, they've got the they have the changes in back and forth speakers, just like you would if you were listening to a morning show on the way to work, right? Very similar style to that. And a lot of people think that, and originally I was like, well, that's kind of cute, but it's kind of silly too in a little way. But I started thinking about it more, and the way that we digest information now has changed, right? Especially kind of this younger generation that grew up with iPods and and podcasts. I was never really into podcasts that much up until a couple of years ago. I didn't know what the hype was, and now I really like it, especially some of this longer format stuff where you can really do deep dives. But think about the implications of that in terms of learning something, and I'll bring it back around to commercial real estate for a second. But if you want to learn about a country, if you want to learn about physics, if you want to learn about anything that you want to learn about, gardening, you can drop all these sources into it, create a podcast, and then listen to it on the way to work. Like the way that you can digest information now is just amazing. You can run, while you're running or while you're biking or whatever, you can listen and learn about these fascinating things and all this content that you created essentially by clicking on this podcast. And for commercial real estate practitioners, think of the way that you can separate yourself, because now you can drop in all this information. You can drop in your market reports. You can drop in your financial analyses. You can drop in, whatever it is that you want, create a podcast for it, and then send it to your client. And your client can listen to it on their way to work. Now you've just grabbed their attention for 5, 10, 15 minutes that you normally wouldn't be able to do. And I think the time is now to do it, because it's kind of unique, right? And here I am telling it to your entire audience, but it's still unique. And I think a lot of people don't utilize it. And I say, in all the noise that we hear in, advertising and even commercial real estate, to separate yourself out, I think is key. And I think that these things that are coming out, these little tools that are coming out, allow you to do that, sort of separate yourself if you're on the sort of frontier, cutting edge of AI.
Yeah, no, 100%. And I've been playing around, and I'll share with the audience what we've been kind of playing around with myself is, I have access to, we've been playing around a little bit with Synthesia, the application for, kind of creating a model or avatar that can present to an audience, right. And you could use it for a variety of different applications. But, being able to link between different softwares too, to be able to provide an even more elaborate type of presentation. So, for example, in Synthesia, you can create a custom avatar, which looks like you. You upload a video and it creates like a, I mean, it's not 100% like you, but it looks pretty close. I mean, it's kind of fascinating. And then
Yeah.
I've been playing around with 11 Labs. I don't know if you've ever played around with. I mean, that's probably the most powerful voice replication software that I've ever seen. It's crazy.
Yeah,
I mean,
it's amazing.
it's amazing. I literally uploaded. So I've written a couple books and I've done the Audible version for my books, and I uploaded a file where I read my book into that model, and it returned me essentially talking based on whatever I was typing in, and it was unbelievable. Like it sounded like me to me, which is kind of crazy. So now you can integrate that because there's a lot of APIs out there. So with Synthesia, you can integrate with 11 Labs, and now you can have it be where I'm presenting information, market knowledge based on information that I'm uploading. So maybe you could use Notebook LM to upload all this information, create the prompt that tells you all the market data. And now you could have someone like myself or my avatar delivering that information in real time.
In real
And
time.
the time investment on my part is minimal. So now I could still do the stuff that I need to do on the business development side. Yet I now have something that's creating a very powerful presentation to showcase my expertise, even though I'm not myself doing it. So it saves me maybe 2, 3, 4, 5 hours of time, maybe, because I have to do all the research. Then I have to create the prompt, and then I have to create the prompt if there weren't for AI. So, and then I have to record it, and I have to mess around with it. Then I have to get an editor involved and do all this other stuff. Whereas now you can do it in half an hour, maybe less. So,
and you're right on the target, because that's the point is now you're freeing up that time through your creativity of using these tools. Now multiply that time over the course of a month, over the course of a year.
Yeah.
How much more time you can devote to exactly what you're talking about, business development, talking with clients. Nobody gets into the business to push paper that I know of. They get into the business because a lot of them are deal junkies, right? They like to do deals. They like to talk with people. They like to negotiate. They like to solve problems. These are the reasons we get into commercial real estate. Nobody wants to, do research and input names into a CRM system. That's not why you get into the business. And so that's the thing that I'm trying to impress upon people, is that people such as yourself are already using these tools, and now you're able to run circles around the people in your market. And if you're not going to do that, these people are going to start taking market share from you. It may not be today, it may not be next month, but very soon they're going to start taking market share from you. You've got a client that you've had for a few years, and suddenly this other creative broker sends them a podcast and every week about what's happening in the market. They're eventually going to get their ear, right? And these are things that are happening right now. So it's good to see you adopting it, and I'm sure a lot of your listeners are as well. So.
Yeah, and again, I think that's one of the values about having a forum like this, is that we share information with people to kind of get them motivated to try to improve themselves. And not everyone's going to take this information. I can't tell you how many times I've talked to people who you share a bunch of knowledge or information with them and they never do anything about it. But the hope is that if you're listening to this podcast, you're actually going to take some action and try to improve your business, because at the end of the day, what's the point of listening to information if you're not really going to benefit from its application in your own life? So,
as an instructor, I've learned that over time that, a lot of my students, they're really excited about the information that they got. This is awesome. If you're talking about CCIM market analysis, or you're talking about, my AI course or whatever, this is amazing. And then at the end of it, they don't really do anything with it, or they say, this is really cool, but do you know of anybody who can do this for me? And I say, it's kind of not the point. You're gonna want to understand how these things work, just like the internet. Do you have somebody that's surfing the internet for you at this point? If you do, you're probably missing out on a lot.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
And it's the same thing with AI. If you're not starting to actually use AI, and you're having somebody else set these things up for you, you're probably setting yourself up to be let down at some point.
Yeah.
Like I said, it might not be next week, but
it's how are you can't, you have to inspect what you expect. So you have to kind of
Right.
understand the inner workings of what the processes are. It's almost like when you're
Yeah.
talking about the intern example. Would you just give a responsibility to an intern and not tell them anything about how to do it, and then
Right.
expect them to kind of figure it out? I
Right.
mean, and if, let's say it's a process in particular that you know nothing about. Let's say you say, "Oh well, Mr. Intern, go figure out a way to implement this, AI into my business." I mean, how are you going to know? Oh well, this is going to be of value, without really getting a clear understanding of the things that are out there and how things kind of work together within your business. And so I agree with you. I think it's important for you to put yourself out there and try to get an understanding of how these things work. You don't have to be a developer, right? You don't have to be a software
Oh,
developer
I'm not a
to fully
developer. I'm a
understand the
commercial real
nuances of
estate
the
guy.
actual code and how it all works, but you should
Yeah.
understand some of its applications and how to work with the tool and what the
Yeah.
value of it is. So,
I have a good friend who is a developer, and I remember a long time ago, he was mentioning how, oh, our kids are really technologically savvy, and they're in front of an iPad, right? They're really good at being users, is what they are. They're not
mhm,
technologically savvy. They're just really good at using the apps and they're users. They're really good users. The thing about AI, which I really enjoy, is I can be a really badass user now because I can write code. I could not write code before, right?
mhm,
I can write code just using natural language and create these things that I couldn't create before.
mhm,
Like a financial calculator, or or a video game. I created Pong, a video game, just by natural language. You can create all these things, and I don't have to learn how to code.
mhm.
So it's opened up this whole new world of technology. Or opened up this whole new world of experience, and you know, I don't think people are quite understanding. You've got this unique opportunity and time to be able to do these things now, which you weren't able to do before. So
Definitely. Absolutely. So, kind of exploring another vertical within brokerage in particular is, you've got your operational side, you've got your admin side, which I think the things we've kind of talked about thus far on the podcast can help you in both of those verticals. Now, the third piece is the business development side. So have you seen any tools in particular that have helped, and business development incorporates, outreach and also marketing, like getting
right.
getting business in the door. Have you
Yeah.
seen any tools in particular that you've played around with that could benefit some of the listeners in that regard?
I gotta say, I'm not a very good marketer when it comes to that sort of stuff. There's several tools out there. I know there's Taplio, there's Dottie Post. Those are good for like social media.
Mhm.
They help you create content, and then they help you with scheduling and things
Mm,
like that. So those sorts of things out there. I just really like, for example, Claude is really good, I think, at copy. And so if you want to create some copy, whatever it is, white paper or anything, I think that's really good. And that's a way to sort of market yourself and get yourself out there as an industry expert. There's never been a better time when you're able to compile a whole bunch of data together in such a short amount of time, and then make it palatable to other people, whether it's the podcast, whether it's, a white paper, whether it's a social media post, whatever it is. You can do that now in seconds, where it used to take you so much more time. Um, putting together a newsletter, you can literally have your LLM do the research on whatever topic you want, compile it all together, and create basically a newsletter. And there's not a lot you need to do other than maybe trust and verify the information that's in there, and then copy and paste it into your newsletter format. Um, uh, the only thing that I think is limiting people now is getting to the point where your imagination is the limiting factor. There are so many tools out there now, and so many different ways to differentiate yourself. It's just a matter of how creative can I be in the process? How can I um, once again just separate myself a little bit from the competition, um, and And you can use a large language model to figure that out too.
Mhm.
You
Yeah.
know, there's so much you can be doing, and you can automate a lot of this stuff. Is the other part. You know, you can automate things to go and grab information from you with ChatGPT tasks. You know,
Yeah.
I have it. It curates every morning for me all of the top five AI news from the internet. It'll do that automatically for me every morning, and then send me an email. I've got another one where it goes out quarterly and grabs the market reports from all the major houses, brings them back to me, summarizes it. You can automate these things and put out so much content that makes you the go-to expert in your market. It's just a matter of putting these tools together and knowing what those tools are, right? You got to educate yourself. Going back to that.
Yeah, well, and to your point, the task function within ChatGPT is really cool. I haven't had
Yeah.
a chance to explore it yet, but those applications that you described, that's one thing that I was wanting to do for a while was because I always look at the reports, right? The Cushman
Yeah.
reports or JLL reports or some of these other
Right.
things, but that kind of spread across the internet. Whereas if you mentioned the queuing of, quarterly reports where you can just have it all come to you and summarize, that's content right there. You can take and throw it at some, you know, maybe create a
Easy.
podcast about it or create a post, a blog post or a newsletter or whatever that is. And I think what it comes down to more than anything is just creating systems and processes so that you can be consistent about it because
Right.
you don't want to have to reinvent the wheel every single time where it's like, oh, so I think that's a important piece.
Yeah, there's a lot of low-hanging fruit out there, I think, for brokers and for users of large language models. It's just educating yourself, knowing what those fruits are, and then just the plucking them and using them. There's a number of ways that you could be 10 times more productive by the end of next week if you just knew the tools and knew how to use them. So.
Definitely. Yeah, no, I couldn't agree more. So where do you see the future of this industry going? And I guess how do you see it evolving such that it could benefit maybe the commercial real estate industry? So let's drag it out because with AI, it's kind of crazy. You mentioned it being a long time ago, 18 months, and the AI, it's that's a lifetime ago. Like it seems like
Yeah,
everything is changing so quickly that
it
by
is.
2 years from now, we could be in a completely different situation. So
Yeah, it is. I was talking to somebody about that, and they're like, the technology is just moving so quickly, and it's like if I do something now, is it going to be obsolete in a couple months? And I realize the issue. I mean, I'm of the same mind. It's difficult, and I'm somebody who almost at this point is so fully involved in AI. I have to keep up with all the trends on a regular basis, and even the people that I follow who are AI experts on like X and so forth, they're having a tough time keeping up because
mhm,
we've literally hit this exponential off ramp
mhm.
where there's so much happening at so many different times. It's like being on a train and seeing all these things, just sort of blur by. It's hard for a lot of folks, and I understand it, especially when you're trying to close a deal or, you're trying to, negotiate or, do property management or whatever. It's hard to keep your finger on the pulse of what's happening, and I get it.
Mhm,
Um, I think things are gonna get a little easier. I think eventually things will start to slow down, but we're just at this point right now where everything's taken off.
mhm,
So my prediction is, and it's not my necessarily prediction, but a lot of the reading that I've done is that we're moving into there's these different layers of what are called agentic AI, and agentic AI are things, are large language models that will do things on your behalf automatically. We're starting to see that with chat gpt tasks, right, where it'll go out and automatically grab those things on my behalf and bring them back. We're starting to see that with these chain of thought reasoning models where they'll do deep market research. I tell it where I want to go, what output I want. It'll go out and navigate that sort of thing. The best analogy that I had heard on this was like automations are like cruise control for your automobile, right? You hit cruise control, but you still got to sort of steer it and you got to know where to go, right? But it's just keeping the foot on the brake or the gas. Whereas agentic AI is like a self-driving car. You get in the back, you tell it where you want it to go, and it's going to navigate its way to that destination. And that is the process that all of these large language model producers are headed. They want to make agents that will go out and do things for you autonomously. And that means that they'll go out and do research autonomously for you. They'll go out, they will control, there's already ones that will control your computer screen and do things on your behalf. You tell it what you want, it'll do the screen, and you go to lunch with your client, or you go take a coffee break, or whatever it is you want. You come back and that work has already been done. That is only going to increase over time. That's only getting better. And that is where, they've almost exhausted what they can do. There's only so much information on the internet, believe it or not, trillions of terabytes, but there's only so much that they can absorb from the internet. Eventually they got to be able to use those tools. And that's where this agentic AI is really taking off. And my feeling is that by the end of this year, it's going to be much more widely adopted, where you're going to have a personal agent, a personal intern next to you that is going to go off and do things on your behalf while you're doing other things. You're talking to your client on your phone, you're going to lunch, you're driving your market to find new opportunities, and those things will be doing things on your behalf in the background. And that's a really exciting thing, especially, once again, for the people who use it and the people who know how to use it. It's going to be really exciting. It's going to change a lot.
Yeah.
And they say when the internet came out, once again, I was kind of young, didn't realize it, but a lot of jobs went away with the internet, right? But it created so many other jobs at the same time. Suddenly you had SEO experts and web designers and all these other industries that didn't even exist. And I think that's going to occur again. And there's going to be some real growing pains, especially in the commercial real estate industry, where, if you're just a paper pusher, if you're just an order taker, you're probably going to get squeezed out of this industry. It's going to be people who are innovative, who are experts in what they do, can come at problems in new and creative, novel ways. Those are the ones that are going to thrive and take market share from others. So.
Definitely. Yeah, no, that's super fascinating. I appreciate the insights there. So, regarding that, I mean, what are some of the best resources out there to learn more about the industry as a whole? How do you kind of alluded to some of the things that you do, but I just thought I'd kind of give you an opportunity to kind of elaborate a little bit. So,
yeah, I mean, there's a lot of people out there that put out some really good stuff. I subscribe to a lot of AI newsletters, the Neuron, Runway, Runway. I forget what it was. And then you can find other ones that, sort of similar, and they kind of give the news of what's happening. And so I get a lot of information out of those. I think I subscribe to like 12 or 15 different newsletters, and some of them say the same thing. So you can skim them kind of across, but some of them have really unique perspectives. So that would be a start. Maybe just subscribing to a newsletter from an expert. Taking a course, there's free online courses on prompting and so forth. I have my course, which is, more focused on how to actually utilize it in commercial real estate. But there's a lot of resources out there. You just have to, look around. There's universities that are offering free resources. Like I said, for prompting or just learning large language, what they are, how they work. It's just like anything, you learn how to play the piano. You got to start by hitting the keys, and, you want to learn a language, you got to start to, start conversationally, hi, how are you, sort of things. And those are all things that you can do in large language models. You can even use large language models to set up training programs to teach you about large language models. That's an amazing thing. Once again, it's all about what's your imagination. You can build just about anything at this point. So you can there's a lot of ways that you can get up to date. It's just, do you have the time? Do you have the energy? Do you have the will to go out and do those things? So
Definitely. Yeah, I know. And regarding your course, I'd love you to send me the link so I can share it in the description as well, because
yeah,
we'll
yeah,
be making sure it's included in all the show notes for the YouTube channel and also in the podcast format as well. But
yeah. I
yeah,
will send it to you. It's implementing AI in CRE.com. But I'll send you the link. It's yeah, we're rolling out some new stuff, which is great. But yeah, it's man, when I started this, I was thinking, oh well, this would be really nice for my students to have, so
mhm,
that they can sort of get up to speed, and then it's just sort of turned into this thing. And once again, then the information's moving so fast. I'm constantly updating, the
curriculum.
lessons, keeping it relevant. And so I hope people enjoy it. The feedback's been really, really great and flattering. So I appreciate
That's
everybody.
amazing. Yeah, I know. I'm looking forward to it as well. I'm sure I'll be probably one of the students to kind of learn a little bit more about that space as
Yeah,
well. But
love to have you.
yeah, for sure. So I wanted to give us a little bit of chance for Q&A. So if anyone who's watching this live, feel free to type away in the chat box if you have any questions in particular. In the meantime, while we wait for some questions to come in, Michael, is there a question or maybe a topic that we didn't cover in this podcast that you felt would be relevant for the audience?
Ooh, boy, that's a good question. There's just so many tools out there. What I was thinking of, and I was maybe going to come back around to you. You had mentioned creating avatars for you, and you were using Synthesia. I use Synthesia in my course to as a sort of an instructor, and she kind of guides you along. Because believe it or not, I don't like to hear myself talk through the whole course. But the other one that I really like, and I show in my courses, is this one called HeyGen. It's
Mhm.
HEYGEN. I don't know if you've used it or
I, ha-
not, but
I haven't used it. I
it,
know of it though.
yeah, yeah, it's very similar. It's similar to Synthesia. They're very similar, but the other thing that I really enjoy about it is that you can upload a video. For example, you can, right now I'm talking, and you can record the video. You can upload it to HeyGen and then have it translate it into another language.
Mm,
So you can, talk about your property, for example, and all the aspects of the property, and then have it translated for you. But think of the implications for that. And it moves your lips exactly like you were saying that language. Like I did one in Mandarin, and it's moving my lips like I'm talking in Mandarin, right? But think of the implications for that too, for differentiating yourself if you work with international clients
mhm,
or people who are not, are second language learners, where you can suddenly, like I was thinking about. I'm probably gonna at some point. I've got two Turkish students, and I'm probably going in the fall to or summer to Turkey to teach, and to be able to relate to them, to talk in Turkish, um, or I'm whatever the language is. I'm
mhm.
a little
I believe it's
ignorant on
Turkish.
that
I
one,
believe
but
Turkish is correct.
is it Turkish? But to be able to send them a video, hey, I'm really excited to teach you and all that, like that connection would suddenly be way different, right?
Mhm.
Hey, they
Yeah.
took the time to do this. Well, think about that with your international clients. Like if you took the time to generate that video for your international clients and speak to them in their language, it's a different connection when you speak the same language, right?
Mhm. Yeah.
And so if you're working with international clients at all, or just, folks in your neighborhood who maybe is English as their second language, to send them something like that. Once again, just differentiating yourself. How can you be a little different than everybody else in all this noise? That's a really cool tool that I would utilize.
No, 100%. And so I speak Spanish. I'm half Puerto Rican, and
Yeah.
so the demand for commercial real estate brokerage services in our market in particular, we have a very large Cuban population.
Yeah.
It's immense. I mean, we have one of the largest Cuban populations outside of Florida, and there's no agents in town that are well. I think I'm one of the only agents in town specifically that strictly focus on commercial real estate and also speak Spanish fluently. So
Right.
that sort of thing can be a differentiator. And even if you don't speak Spanish
Totally.
fluently, for example, but you're able to create the content that that teaches them about what the business, about buying, selling, leasing commercial property, now you become that recognized expert. And even if you don't yourself speak that language, at least at that point, they've seen you, they know you, and they can get through the transaction. Maybe they speak,
100%.
they should, a lot of them speak English
Yeah.
normally, just fine. But there's obviously that connection that's been built as a result of that.
Yeah, I mean, if you're in LA market, San Diego, Texas, any southern states, and you put out content, for Spanish speakers, or, if you're in, the Bay Area, there's a lot of, Chinese Mandarin,
Mhm.
so if you're putting content out like that, you differentiate yourself, and the East Coast and all these places that have these pockets of, people who have settled into the United States that speak a different language. And if you're able to connect with them, I mean, you can take some market share pretty quick, I would say.
Absolutely. Yeah, that's some great advice. All right. So looks like you've answered all the questions we have so far. But Michael, I just greatly appreciate your time here today.
Yeah, yeah, it
It's
was a
obviously
great
very
conversation. My
yeah, no,
pleasure.
I think a lot of people are going to gain value from our conversation. I'm really excited about the response we get from this episode because I'm sure it's going to be a really insightful one for a lot of people, and I'm sure you're going to get people reaching out to you. And I'll make sure to include the show notes the link to the course as well. But if
Sure.
you want to learn more about you and maybe even get in touch with you, how would they be able to do that?
I'm on LinkedIn. Happy to connect with folks. I'm on X. I'm on yeah, if you go to implementing AI in CRE.com, my email address is in there, so you can feel free to email me. Yeah, number of ways. So happy to connect and yeah, just share and hear about people's. What I love to hear about is how people are using it, because that really
Mhm.
helps me. Like I have ideas on how to use it. Being 20-year veteran expert, but I love to hear how other people are using it, because people
Mhm.
have really creative ways of doing it, and just like hearing about you and using Synthesia. So I'd love to hear how people are using it and share, some back and forth stuff. So that'd be
Definitely.
great.
No, I appreciate that. And I'll make sure to include all that in the show notes as well. So we'll include your LinkedIn, your email,
Yeah.
your Twitter login or Twitter handle, I should say, not login. But we'll make sure to include that all in the show notes as well so you guys can reach out to them. So Michael, thanks again so much for your time. We obviously greatly appreciate it. For those of you guys who are listening to the podcast, please like and subscribe. It makes a big difference in our ability to reach a broader audience. Along with that, we post on Spotify and Apple Podcasts. If you could leave a 5-star review, it just ensures that more and more people can listen to the podcast. We already have many 5-star reviews on those platforms, but the more we get, the better it is for our reach. So thanks again so much for tuning in, and we'll see you all next time.